Hello everyone, my name is Arundhati Amsani and welcome to this session on past perfect continuous tense, which is also called the past progressive tense. Right? So what does it denote? Past perfect continuous always talks about the actions that continued for some time up to a certain point in the past. So it started in the past, it continued in the past, and it also finished in the past. So when you're trying to denote the continuousness of an action, you use the past perfect continuous. So this little diagram on the right sums it up very well. So you have present here and you have past. Okay, so the past perfect is like the past of past. And here you're talking about the progressive nature of that particular action. So it is past perfect continuous. That activity had been happening. Okay, let's look at the next slide. So what are the uses of the past perfect continuous or progressive tense? The past perfect continuous is important to highlight the aspect that an activity was ongoing in the past. Okay, let's look at some examples. Max had been playing Minecraft all the time in the past. I had been learning Sanskrit over the weekend. Okay, so this action is already over. That was in the past that I was doing. Right? The supervisor had been inspecting the quality of the equipment. Okay, the process of inspection is completely over. Okay, and you are in the present moment, but you're talking about that particular action when it was ongoing. Okay, so this is different from has. People, has is used with the present perfect continuous, and it is often confused with past perfect continuous. So with past perfect continuous, you use had with a D, and with present perfect continuous, you use has. Okay. Let's go to the next one. So the past perfect continuous is used to talk about an ongoing event that occurred before another event specifying a certain point of time in the past. Okay, so uses, see, it's the same expression, but what functions it is doing, that is important. Okay, so communication is all about being precise and conveying the right message. So you use the same tense but for different functions, right? So here in this case, when you have two events, for example, using the past perfect continuous, you can clearly tell which happened before the other. Okay, so this is very useful in narrating a sequence of events or happenings. Okay, so to make it clear. So for example, we had been waiting in the lounge before we boarded the plane. So which one happened first, boarding the plane or waiting in the lounge? It was waiting in the lounge. So just by looking at the helping verb had been, okay, and waiting, you can easily understand which one happened before, right? Next one. Sarah had been working as a lab technician before she got an opportunity to study medicine. So what happened first? She worked as a lab technician. Okay, so that was the act that happened before she went on to study medicine. Okay, and Swati had been talking to me before she went into the kitchen to prepare dinner. Okay, so she had been talking. That progressive or ongoing action happened before she began to prepare dinner. Okay, so can you see how clear it is when you're trying to, I mean, if you use just simple past, it wouldn't make, sense, or it wouldn't make it clear. You can't talk about the sequence or order of the events. If you say, Swati talked to me, and then she went into the kitchen to prepare dinner, so that doesn't signify the sequence. Okay, so this is much more free-flowing and a bit more sophisticated as well. Okay, and the third use is it shows an ongoing activity in the past as a reason for an effect that occurred at a later time in the past. What does this mean? Okay, so something has happened because of which there was another effect. So the cause is in the past perfect continuous and the effect is in the past tense. Okay, so let's look at some examples to make it clear. He was happy because he had been receiving a good salary, right? So what is the cause? The effect is he was happy. But what is the cause here? Because he's been receiving a good amount of money in salary. Okay. Another way of saying this with rearrangement of the words in the sentence is he had been receiving a good salary because of which he was happy. Okay, so people, please excuse me writing all this in uppercase. I just began and I continued. I didn't want to go back later, correcting and spending time on it. So I hope you understand. Okay, just try to get the sense of this. Next one. Little Jack was wet because he had been playing in the rain. Okay, so what was the cause? Playing in the rain. And what is the effect? That little Jack was wet. So which one happened before again? Playing in the rain. Okay, so this cause and effect thing can be clearly explained using the past perfect continuous. Okay, next one. She missed her train because she had been talking to her friend. Okay, so the effect is she missed her train and the cause is that she had been talking to her friend. Okay, so this is how you make it clear. Let's go to the next one. It is also used to talk about the duration, okay, of the period of time of a past activity, and it often specifies the time at which that activity stopped. Okay, or it also tells you the event that stopped the activity, to be precise. Okay, so here let's look at this example. Claire had been working on this project for 6 months before the company was closed. Okay, so this action or the activity of working on the project continued until the event of the closing of the company happened. Okay, so that action which continued up to an event that actually stopped the activity. Okay, so this is how clearly you can explain using the past perfect continuous tense. Another one, George had been sleeping for 2 hours before the phone rang. Okay, so the activity of sleeping stopped or discontinued because of the event of the phone ringing. Okay, so this is how you can say. Next one is, the children had been playing in the park all evening before they went home. Okay, so what event stopped them from playing? The event of going home. Okay, so once they started going home, that obviously stopped the activity of playing there. Okay, so this is how you can specify things in detail. Let's go to the next one. The past perfect continuous is also used to describe an activity that had been happening in the past and there has been a pattern or routine. It is often used to talk about habits, okay, and this again specifies at what point the action stopped. Okay, so for example, Aaron had been practicing yoga until he fell sick. Okay, so had been practicing signifies a habit, a routine which is done every day. So Aaron had been practicing yoga until he fell sick. At that point, it stopped. Okay, so even when you don't use the point at which it stopped, it clearly tells you that it was about a habit. Is that right? So this is often used in combination, however, with the point when it stopped. Right? Next one. I had been going out shopping until there was a lockdown. So I used to regularly go shopping. This is what it means, right? So you had a habit of going shopping regularly until there was a lockdown. Okay, so this is when it stopped. I think that is clear. Next one. He had been receiving too many spam mails until he installed an antivirus in his PC. Okay, So that was a continuous activity. There was a pattern. Every single day, there were too many spam mails. When did that stop? When he installed an antivirus in his PC. Okay, so this is how you can explain. Let's go to the next one. It is also used to describe a point, the particular or the specific point at which the activity began, and it also implies the duration. Okay, so this is where we use the adverbs such as since and for. Okay, so I had been waiting for the bus since 9 a.m. Okay, for example, if someone has joined you at the bus stop at 9:30, the moment you mention the time 9 a.m., they can understand that you had been waiting for the bus for half an hour, isn't it? Okay, but this is in past tense. So you just go on to tell someone about, that particular thing as if the act has happened. I hope that is clear. I had been waiting for the bus since 9 a.m. So the act of waiting is over, done with. Okay, maybe you are telling this to someone at work, in fact. Right? Next one. He had been living here since 1990. Okay, and you're also telling what happened later, before he moved to Canada. Okay, so maybe till the present moment, or maybe they're in Canada at the moment. Okay, so since 1990, and at that point, that clearly tells how long they've lived. Okay, so when they moved, that comes later. Okay, let's go to the next one. We know the uses of the past perfect continuous. Now, let's see when we can't use the past perfect continuous. Okay, right. So you can't use the past perfect continuous with stative verbs. People have recently made a video of a series of videos in stative verbs, so you can learn more about stative verbs in that video. Okay, so here are some examples of stative verbs again. So you can't use the past perfect continuous with some stative verbs. Okay, you can't say I had been agreeing with her. You can't say we had been knowing her. And in the same way, you can't say what had you been meaning. You only say what did you mean. Okay, I had not been recognizing you. So these are some of the examples of stative verbs which can't go well with the past perfect continuous. Okay, so yes, we understood the uses and how to not use it. Now let's see the structure of the past perfect continuous. So as with any other tenses, you have a subject. Okay, then you have the helping verb had, which is the same for all subjects, all persons. Okay, so subject plus had plus been plus the verb, and then you add the ing. Okay, verb plus ing indicates present participle, and that comes in combination with had been and the subject. Okay, so here let's look at some examples. The positive sentences are formed by using this structure. So I, we, you, he, she, it, and they form your subjects. So I had been reading. So read is the verb here. We had been traveling. You had been watching TV. He had been waiting. She had been cooking. It had been working. Obviously, we use it for inanimate objects which don't have life. Okay, we use it for animals as well, but these days we don't say it even for a cat or a dog. We say it's a boy. Okay, so it's a male. He's a male. He's a it's a boy. Okay, so they had been singing. Right, I hope that makes sense. Let's look at the negative stuff. So subject plus had plus not, which is a contraction, hadn't, plus been plus verb plus ing. So the contraction hadn't is used in spoken context. You don't use hadn't in written language. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. So I had not been listening, or I hadn't been listening. We had not been fighting, which is also we hadn't been fighting. You had not been sleeping, or you hadn't been sleeping or sleeping well. he had not been arguing, or he hadn't been arguing. She had not been talking, okay, or she hadn't been talking. It had not been working, or it hadn't been working. They had not been eating well, or they hadn't been eating well. Okay, now the interactive form of it is you exchange the positions of the subject and the helping verb had. That's it. Okay, so instead of putting the subject before, you put had before. So I had been reading becomes had I been reading. Okay, so an appropriate question could be something like, had I been sleeping when you knocked on the door? Okay, so had I been sleeping, had I been asleep, okay, etc. So this is the past perfect continuous, so you're using ing. Had I been sleeping? Had we been walking for so long? Had you been working all night? Had he been teaching? Had she been learning all these years? Had it been playing? Okay, and had they been staying here? Okay, so this is about the past perfect interrogative tense. Okay, and most often the interrogative comes in combination with the WH forms. Okay, so you don't just say, had you been learning? Okay, you might possibly say, why had you not been learning? The why comes before the had, and the rest of the question remains same. Okay, who had you been talking to? Okay, had you been talking is a question, but if you're interested in the person who someone is talking to, you ask, who had you been talking to? Okay, similarly, where had he been living? When had you been working? What had you been cooking? Okay, so those are interrogative forms with WH, right? Let's go to the next one. Contractions. As I mentioned, I had becomes I'd, we had becomes we'd. That was for hadn't people, but here you put the subject and the helping verb had with a contraction. Okay, so if you can see I had, you remove the HA and you put the apostrophe after I and you put them together saying I'd. Okay, we had becomes we'd, you had becomes you'd. Okay, he had becomes he'd, she had becomes she'd, it had becomes it'd, which is very rare, they had becomes they'd. Okay, and we came across the negative forms already, so you can just pause the video and have a look at them if you're interested. Okay, now people, it is very much possible to confuse between we'd, which can be we had, and we would also. It's the same contraction, but the verb form that follows should make it clear to you. Okay, when you use we would, okay, we would is followed by the infinite form. You would say we would go to the film, we would go to watch the film. Okay, now when you say we had watched with a D, we had watched that film. Okay, so after the we had, you get the past participle, whereas with the we would, okay, that would be followed by an infinite form of the verb. Is that clear? Okay, I hope so. Let's go to the next one. And forming the right ing form. Okay, so for a perfect continuous, you need to use the right ing form. Okay, so you end up making errors and spelling mistakes can make it wrong in spite of getting the tense correct. So let's look at how to make the right ing form for your verbs. So most verbs, you can just simply add ing. Like talk becomes talking, walk becomes walking, tell becomes telling. So you just add ing. Okay, now there are some verbs that end with e, like come, bake, smile, etc. For these verbs, you drop the e and then you just add the ing. Okay, so for coming, you don't say coming, you remove the e and then you say coming, coming. Same goes with baking, smiling. Next one is verbs that end in ie, like die, vie means challenge and compete with each other, tie and lie. Okay, so you remove the ie and then you add y before you put the ing. Okay, So you remove the IE and then you change it to Y. And then you add the ING. Okay, so for example, DIE, die becomes dying. Okay, so this is like, it might have the same spelling as, the color, the sound, okay, especially the pronunciation. Dying, that is the coloring, DYEING, sounds the same as DYING, doesn't it? Okay, so dying. This one is different. Okay, so this is the continuous form of die, to die, which is the opposite of live. Next one is vying, tying, lying. Okay, and you have verbs that end in CVC, which means consonant, vowel, and consonant. Okay, for example, verbs like tap, stop, rob, ban, and grab. Can you see? Consonant, vowel, and consonant. Okay, so whichever ends with a consonant and followed by preceded by a vowel, there you remove the last consonant and then you add the ING. For example, you don't remove the last consonant. Let's look at the examples. You have tapping, TAP, that was the verb, okay, which is in CVC form. Then you double the last consonant, which is P. So TAPPING. The same way, stop. Okay, it ends with P, so you double the P and then you add the ING. Okay, same goes for rob, robbing, ban, banning, grab, grabbing. Okay, so when I say CVC, look at the sounds of the words, people, and not the letters. Okay, let's go to the next one. So short answer questions. When you say, had you done a project on this topic, you can simply say, yes, I had. You don't have to say the entire sentence again. Yes, I had, or no, I hadn't. Had she forgotten her lunchbox? You could say, yes, she had, or no, she hadn't. Okay, so this is the beauty of past perfect continuous, or, which could just elicit the short answers instead of making it prolonged. Okay, let's look at some examples as I've been discussing throughout the session. Okay, just to make it more clear. So, very common mistake, people, you use since instead of for. Okay, so this is a sentence here. I had been living here since 20 years. So whenever you say since, you have to specify the point of time, that exact moment when you started living there. Okay, so you should say, I had been living here, since 2000. Okay, and the next one is use of has instead of had. Okay, so very commonly confused. So has is used for your present continuous tense for actions that began in the past and continued up to the present, whereas had is used for actions that began in the past and also finished in the past. Okay, so you can't interchange them. She has been talking to her mother before she left for office. Okay, so she has been is wrong here, because she already left for office and that is in simple past. Okay, so you say she had been talking to her mother before she left for office. Okay, so that's one thing to say. Next one is you use simple past instead of past perfect. Okay, so if you don't use the past perfect, you can't signify the sequence of events, or you can't highlight the fact that it happened way back in the past before some other thing. Okay, so you can't say she was working for 5 years before she left the job. That's wrong to say. So you should say she had been working for 5 years before she left the job. Next one is use of wrong spellings. As I told you, adding the ing has to be carefully considered. Okay, you should look at it very carefully and no spelling mistakes can be entertained. So had they been coming every day, here you have to remove the E after come. Okay, so that is how it makes sense. So yes, people, that's a little bit about your past perfect continuous. So if you have any questions, you can always leave in the comment section, and you have plenty of practice exercises online. I'm going to post some of the links in the description, so you can just follow them and have some practice. So yes, have fun learning English, and thanks for watching this video, and please subscribe to my channel.